The second code of know thyself. I have an older friend of mine who's what I consider a wise individual. And I showed him once the 14-point code, and he looked at it and he said, just throw out everything, just keep the second one. Because arguably all of them are sort of reduced to the second one. We begin with the first one because if a man doesn't set his intention in life, very little can happen after that. So speaking the word is so important, right? But after that, you open up the gates of the journey into yourself, in which you discover all kinds of heroes and monsters and hidden rooms and so forth, the mansions in the room. And the key that opens all of that is the second code, which is know thyself, the living the examined life, the Socratic life of taking a hard look at questions in your mind and being willing to self-observe, which is a very challenging thing for most humans, because we have five senses that view the universe that's outside of us. And in our educational institutions, we're taught a lot of things about the world and about how the world works and so forth, and history and science and mathematics and languages, all of which is important in its own respect. But there's not a whole lot taught about the interiority of a person, of a human being, right? So at the time, a lot of younger people emerge into post-high school years, into if they go on to higher education, and even beyond that, because in higher education they're specializing more and more, especially as they get into graduate degrees. The scope narrows even more and more. There's not a lot of emphasis, even in the so-called higher education institutions, around examining subjectivity and interiority, what's going on inside of oneself, right? And this is the whole path of what is known sometimes as the discipline of transcendence, right? Which is working on oneself. So Arc of Brotherhood is a discipline of transcendence, a path of self-examination and of discovery of who one is, which means cutting through all the layers of the unconscious, which includes not just your own individual unconscious, but the unconscious of your entire family system. So most people are born into family systems of individuals who had other challenges in their life or other inclinations, and weren't inclined to examine themselves, or just didn't have the opportunity or that possibility. As our fireplace blows
fire's
up,
going. The fire likes this this code.
That's
here.
what happens when we start talking about awakening the energies on the inside.
Yeah. So I like what you're saying about humans' tendency to be kind of egocentric and to actually like not even want to look inward, and to sort of become obsessed with the outside world and learning about the outside world, and it's sort of a safer place to go rather than inward into your own darkness, trauma, programming that's in there that's not yours, stuff from the past, ways that you are that are shameful. But beyond understanding your own inner world, it actually goes beyond that to the greater community. Like if you can sufficiently go deep into yourself, you open up the space to actually like do healing work around your family and with your community, and then to maybe even assist other people on that journey, which is what men are doing in men's groups.
Yeah, the thing is, when people look inside themselves, usually what they discover is pain and confusion and other difficult matters that they don't necessarily want to shed light on. And so this is why meditation, for example, can be challenging or problematic when people first try it, because oftentimes when a person sits down to meditate, what they're confronting is the confusion of their mind. And that's why the process can be so difficult. So meditation is highly valuable. I've been a lifelong meditator myself, but in the group setting, there's a dynamic that arises in group settings that is difficult to discover in meditation in and of itself. And so the two tend to complement each other very well. And in the group setting, all the members of the group function as mirrors or reflectors of what's inside of oneself, right? And so this is why conscious community can be so effective, because you're reminded all the time of aspects of yourself that you might not be able to see through a purely contemplative or introspective sort of practice, such as thinking or reading or meditating or what have you, right? And so the dynamism of the group is what awakens that inside of oneself. And then once we start to look inside, we start to confront these shadows, right? And they can be quite dark and they can be quite intense. And when we start to look into, for example, the ways in which we are unconsciously using others in a relationship, the heart and soul of codependency, as we talk about, right? Specialness in relationship, where we enter into the process of relationship with another person believing that we're flawed on the inside. And so we need that other person to make us whole and complete. So this is a losing venture from the beginning because the other person has the same thing in mind. And so this is why in all the wisdom traditions, what they all emphasize is the importance of cultivating an ability to tap into that ground of existence, or that deeper part of ourself, deeper part of our mind that is outside of ego. And in men's work, men can be, generalizing here of course, but men can be notoriously competitive and locked into their own minds and very separate and very disconnected from feelings and the sensory effects of their body. And so for a guy to sit in a room with other men, he first has to get past the idea that these men, who may be projecting father, brother, what have you, onto them, are not there to make him feel less than what he is. So they're not there to compete with him. But he might experience that in the beginning in certain ways. As you know, a lot can come up in men's work in groups where a guy starts seeing aspects of his past, his ghost figures, in the room around him, in other men. So he has to get past that one. So anyway you cut it, we have to face into the wounds and into the shadows on the inside as a way of bringing them into the light of our consciousness so we can be a little more aware of them. And then with that awareness, we can potentially make better choices in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. I like what you're saying about our tendency to be enwrapped in our own egos, to be lost in our own egocentricity, and how that doesn't work in relationship. It doesn't work in romantic relationship. We need ways of vaporizing our ego or transcending our ego for a moment, or being able to get past it for a time, be in spaces where that occurs, and being in an intentional space with other people.
That's right.
Is a great way to do that, because it sort of turns the heat up.
See, the problem is that two egos can't really meet. They can't really meet. They can consider each other, they can size each other up, they can maybe in certain ways play or with each other, or try to humor the situation, what have you, but there's not really ever going to be a deep meeting. The part of us that meets with somebody else, that truly meets with somebody else, is outside of the ego and its concerns. And also, just this quick side note here, to be clear, when I talk about ego, I'm not talking about something that's inherently bad. So it's just, as you know, the ego is just a watchdog that's there to take care of our boundaries and our survival issues and take care of our body and what have you. But because of that, it has an ancient pedigree. It's hundreds of thousands, millions of years of evolution behind it around survival and taking care of one's well-being. Because of that, it tends to be inherently mistrustful of intimacy and connecting. And so men, in their not just their intimate lives, but also in their lives with other men, have to face into that issue continuously, which is that, are their needs lined up with the needs of others around them, right? And according to the ego, that's not the case, because the ego has its own set of needs and sees others as either obstacles or means to an end to be used to get one's needs met in life, right? And this is what we call the whole area of manipulation and charisma and what have you factors in there. A very charismatic person can be very good at manipulating others and getting them to meet your needs in life, right?
Yeah.
But if we're looking at meeting on a higher level, sort of like when Rumi was referring to his famous poem, somewhere out there's a field, I will meet you there. Beyond right doing and wrong doing, there's a field, I will meet you out there. It refers to that higher ground, right? That we can meet at once we're getting beyond our self-preoccupied needs, right? And so that's where men's work is very powerful in terms of being able to listen to another person, as to another guy. What's his story? What's going on for him? The same dynamic applies in intimate relationships also. What's the story of the woman or the other person, the partner, the romantic partner? What's the story of them? Can I be curious about their story? And can I find the areas where my story aligns with their story? And as a result of that, experience that common ground, right?
Yeah.
But the egos don't meet. The egos will see things in terms of what I can get out of this and what I can get from this person. And
Yeah, that resonates deeply. I can tell you how many times I've seen men come to men's weekends or sit in on a group and just have an epiphany and say, like, guys, this is such a novel experience for me. Like, men don't talk to each other this way. Men don't sit in this kind of space together. And I'm having a spiritual experience just being in this space. And it's really created by men having a higher purpose of trying to go deep into know thyself, but also participating in that process with each other. And so when a man's standing up in front of the room, sharing something difficult, going through a difficult process, the other guys there are completely dropping their own story, their own stuff, other than the part of them that actually really feels him and aligns with what's going on for him. And when they come out of that experience, they're like, wow, what just happened there? Like, I was just so in that. I felt so connected to this guy. I felt so connected to these men around here, and I wasn't thinking anything about my own problems.